Hello and welcome to Fresh Faced Comics, the comic book podcast where our lifelong comic book reader guides his friend through the world of comics for the first time. My name is Joey Morgan, the aforementioned lifelong reader. With me as always is Jacob Licklider, the aforementioned newbie.
It's the return of the disaster bisexual, this time with more folk horror.
It is. It absolutely is. It's the return of the disaster bisexual and my favorite comic book character of all time with John Constantine. We're back today with Hellblazer. Hellblazer, the Fear Machine. This is volume 3 of Hellblazer. This is, of course, still by Jamie Delano, covering issues something.
It is issues 14 to 22.
Thank you so much for that, Jacob. I should really come prepared to these things. It's like I run the podcast. Yes,
you should.
We're back with Hellblazer. Jacob, non-spoiler section first. Let's jump right into this. What is Hellblazer, the Fear Machine about?
Okay, so that's tricky because it's so this is all one story. Like this is all one 9-issue story, all about. Well, okay, the actual story itself, the plot kind of meanders a little bit, but it mainly settles on wanting to do largely a tribute to British writer Nigel Neal. Like it's never stated that that's what Delano is doing, but that's what Jamie Delano is doing in this thing. Like, he is tributing Nigel Neal, folk horror, and basically the premise is the Doctor Who serial The Mind of Evil, but with hippies.
I want to say, Jacob, whenever you read through these books that we read for the podcast, you always write down your expectations going in. And one of the first things you messaged me before you started it was you said, my expectations are Mind of Evil, but with John Constantine. And my response to that, I believe, was like, oh, yeah, you're pretty much there. Yeah, that's it. You're right. For those that have not seen Doctor Who, The Mind of Evil, what is that like? What is that about?
So that is, the whole idea is that there is a creature, this creature with psychic abilities that is creating and emanating fear as an idea, radiating outwards under the control of a charismatic villain wanting to take over the world. And that's kind of what this is doing. It then veers into folk horror territory with our villains literally wanting to do more than just take over the world and do some crazy shit there. But like that's what the Fear Machine is. And if I'm gonna be honest, like a lot of people don't talk about this one. Like,
it's true. That is very true.
I mean,
I don't know why. It's so good.
It is really good. Like, so I think it's nearly on par with the first 2 volumes. I mean, or the main book of the first 2 volumes, excluding the horrorist, because fuck the horrorist.
Fuck the horrorist, indeed. All my homies.
The horrorist brought down the score of that second volume quite a bit.
Shame. It is such a shame. Oh my god,
it was just that bad. But yeah, it's like. The thing about Constantine is, let's be honest, I think people, like, the big Constantine story that I always hear about is Dangerous Habits. Mm-hmm. And whereas I think this deserves to be talked about more because it is great and an interesting reflection. Like, it's also fascinatingly structured. It's kind of slow, and that slow start made it a little difficult for me to initially get into it. But that slow start also helps introduce characters and give John maybe some of the most stability he's had in the run so far. Like,
oh yeah, totally.
It's very briefly.
It's very easy to think that like this story. I mean, you said it yourself. Like, it's a bit of a slow start. It kind of meanders a little bit, and that is very purposeful, I think, because this is one larger 9-issue story. I think Delano knows that he has a lot of time to tell this story. So the first couple issues, there's not really like an inciting incident for a while to actually like kick the story into gear, because it is about the first few issues are about like setting a new sort of status quo for Constantine as a character,
but still starting to hint on like the ideas, like. Mm-hmm. Like the fear starts to happen, and oddly enough, I think Delano does a really good job with getting just the tiny moments of off-putting horror in the first half of the story, especially. Like, we'll get to it when we get to the top of the opening scene of the third issue, which is sort of when the third issue of the story, issue 16. The way that opens is utterly fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of utterly fascinating, let's talk about some fascinating questions that we got.
Yes, again.
Let's jump on over to Discord first. Now, Jacob,
let's do the Discord one.
I have to ask before we get into what was actually said. Did you finally figure out what this was?
No, I didn't.
Jacob! Okay, so on Discord, our friend Kian, typically at Kian the Quark on Blue Sky, said Constantine ? With a picture of an orange-like fruit. Jacob, I want to go through the things that you guessed that this was before I tell you what it actually is. Yep. You went with an orange, a mandarin, and a tangerine. Jacob, this is a clementine.
A what?
It's a clementine. You don't know a clementine? Are you kidding me?
No!
What, Jacob?
I told you, look, I was running out of orange fruits at tangerine.
It's a clementine. Okay, I also need you, when this episode comes out, to listen to that back, because that sounded so funny on my end. It sounded like you just, like, flipped your mic, and there was just this vibration on my end.
I did! I'm making gestures.
Oh, my God.
God damn it, Kian.
They're essentially just tiny oranges. That's all they are. It's oh my God. It's so funny. Anyway, over to our Blue Sky questions. If you want to submit Blue Sky questions to us as we prepare our episodes, our Q&As, you can go over to my Blue Sky at jobobloodonut.bluesky.social. I post Q&As on the days that we're recording the podcast, so you can submit questions there. Just keep that in mind for future reference.
Yes.
First question comes from our friend Jamie at Jamie-season7.bluesky.social. Says you should focus on Hellblazer for the next year. I would love to. Actually, at an episode every other week, we could do literally the entire original Hellblazer run in 1 year.
I was going to say, it would be the entire run in a year.
Would actually love to do that, Jacob. You have no idea.
We're not going to, but with the current political...
Jacob, what if I keep telling you that the next episode is just the next volume of Hellblazer, and the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that is just more and more and more Hellblazer? How would you feel then?
Well, I would have to calm down some guests coming on in upcoming episodes, Joey.
Or we could just get them to read Hellblazer. We could get everyone to read Hellblazer, and I think they would be all the better for it.
I don't know if we could get Mason to read Hellblazer.
Oh, I would love to stick Mason on Dangerous Habits. That would be so much fun. Oh, God, I would love that. Anyway, our next question comes from our friends at the Enterprise System. This is specifically from Jubilee in the Enterprise System. They say, my one hot take is that Constantine should be transition goals, not just for trans men, but also for trans women. Saying this as a trans woman, I think John Constantine is just goals for everyone. Everyone should try to be more like John Constantine.
So you're saying everyone should be a disaster bisexual?
Everyone should have cancer, Jacob.
That got dark. That got dark real quick.
I wanted to see how long I could let that silence sit. That is a joke, mostly. Our friend Mason then, at the GD256.bluesky.social, submitted multiple questions, as he always does, the wonderful man that he is. Says, number 1, what is the side effect of blazing up a toke of hell weed? I don't know how the Mary Jane works. Ignore my language choices. I don't know. If does the toke come from hell? In this case, is that what a Hellblazer is?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Look, here's the thing. Weed almost seems too mild for John. Like,
yeah. Although we know he definitely has. I mean,
he definitely has.
He totally has. Mason's second question says, Speaking of getting dark, what is your biggest fear? Jacob can't avoid this question.
So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna ramble off a little bit, and what you're gonna actually do, Joey, is put it like a bleep over this, so I can avoid the question, and Mason won't hear it.
What if
That's what we're gonna do.
Don't do that? What if I ignore your wishes to bleep this?
Oh well, then the answer is snakes. But
okay, we'll leave it at that. My biggest fear is that everyone in the world will never listen to Fresh Face Comics, and I think everyone in the world should listen to Fresh Face Comics. It's a nice podcast.
I mean, we got someone to listen to one of our one shots.
That's true. That's true. Oh yeah, this is our first episode we're recording since this podcast is officially the Gail Simone approved Fresh Face
Comics.
I can't tell you how many times in real life I've told someone that I know that I am the Gail Simone approved Joey Morgan because she follows me on Blue Sky now. So I've been having fun with it. Gail Simone, if you're listening to this, I know you're not, but if you are, we love you so much.
We promise we'll be doing more of your stuff on the podcast soon, right, Joey?
This is true. I make the schedule. You don't, Jacob. Lisa's third question says, how the fuck do you blaze hell? It's made of fire. Do you fight fire with fire? Trick question. The answer is no. I agree.
Mason, excuse me. You have seen Hell in the DC universe, as you guessed it on an episode a while back. I won't say which episode that is because of current world events. Put two and two together, listeners. It is not just fire.
Or listeners, just listen to every episode of Fresh Face Comics, and eventually you'll find Mason on one that talks about hell. I think you should do that.
Technically, too.
That's true. Just listen to every episode, every single one. Mason's fourth question is, what is your favorite aspect of this comic? What is your favorite aspect of this comic, Jacob?
Honestly, the horror. Like, I think Delano does the horror really, really well. Like, some of the
occult shit towards the end is
particularly
striking.
Towards the end.
Oh, God, that I love.
It feels like I don't like to make a bunch of Doctor Who references, but the interaction between early stuff that would become Vertigo and specifically Doctor Who novel writers of the 1990s is an interesting link.
That is true.
I know some people were reading these comics, Paul Cornell.
That's true.
Very probably Kate Orman.
On those connections, they're also both incredibly gay Doctor Who novels and 90s Doctor Who novels and Vertigo comics. I think that's a great connection there. That started off as being serious, but then I started laughing, so I couldn't take it seriously. But it's true. Is it weird to say I like the domestics in this comic? I like the domestics a lot.
It's so weird for John. It's so weird for John to be in a domestic situation and it working out.
Yeah, it's interesting because like some of the larger, weirder, more traditional adventure style like Constantine stories we see today weren't really the norm when he was first created. He was just kind of a guy back in Swamp Thing, and so like the first big like Nergal arc in the first 2 volumes of Hellblazer are kind of out of the ordinary for him. Despite the fact that this is definitely a sort of new status quo for John in this story, it's also, I would say, kind of back to just the guy that he was before all that, before the whole return of the Newcastle stuff in his life. I think it's cool. It's just great to see him like this. Mason's 5th question: how would you approach an adaptation of this comic? What medium would you do, and who would you get to act in it? Okay, so we're talking a hypothetical world where I can adapt this story however I want. I'm going to make Constantine Season 2 an adaptation of the Fear Machine.
I would just do it as a film.
That's like, fair. But here's the thing. My actual answer is an animated film in the style of City of Demons, which is a great Constantine animated film. I think this is a story that would lend itself very nicely to that. Some of the weirder visuals, I think, towards the middle end of this comic really lend themselves to an animated style, I think. Also, there are just some great scenes. There's one scene in particular of John Constantine just tripping balls at one point early on, and it would look really cool in animation, I think. So.
Well, here's the thing. I would actually go for maybe a live action film adaptation
with Matt Ryan.
But potentially directed by like someone maybe like Robert Eggers. Like
I could see that.
I feel like Eggers, especially because I saw his Nosferatu right at the end of last year, and I'm like, you could. I feel like you would have fun with this. You would. It would be a little out of your wheelhouse to blend more of the some of the aspects, but it would be a fascinating piece. Yeah, and I would try to keep it a period piece. I would try to keep it set in the 80s and not modern.
I think that's a very important part of some of the more political aspects of this story, and I think for just Hellblazer as a whole, especially Delano era Hellblazer, and I would say Ennis as well, very much commenting on the political situation at the time. It's great. It's great stuff.
It's going to be fascinating because I imagine we're just going to continue through Hellblazer, like the 300 issue run in general.
Totally.
To see how that political commentary evolves and changes, especially after writers like Delano and Ennis are gone, because I know Ennis is a very political writer, politically charged writer for better and for worse.
God, what is wrong with me? How have I got 87 episodes and not had you read any Garth Ennis? I fucking hate my life. Fuck. There's so many comics, man. There's so many.
We've gone 87 episodes, and on the main podcast, we haven't read any Gail Simone.
But we've been covering Gail Simone month to month in Uncanny X-Men. If you watch Fresh Face One Shots, you can listen to us.
Yes, but only recently.
And that's also how Gail Simone discovered us, because Gail Simone follows me and it's called us adorable. This is the Gail Simone approved Blood Donut Studios. Mason's final question says, who would win in a fight, Doom Guy or John Constantine? I don't know what the fuck Mason meant by this, to be honest. I have nothing.
So the video game, I think the video game of Doom takes place in hell, or like a hell world. Okay. I don't know.
I play about like 5 different video games on rotation, and that's my exposure to video games.
So I don't know. I've never played Doom. That's the thing.
I just want to say I'm drinking a lovely mix of some lemonade and some white cranberry strawberry cocktail mix, and it's nice. It's just nice. It's cool.
Cool. But also I think John would win a fight. In a fight, John has magic, and John
does have magic. John's also just cool, and you can't beat a cool guy in a fight. You've seen how many fights Batman wins. He's just cool. He's a win because we've
seen John kicked on his ass before, though. Like
Jacob. John's cool, okay? Anyway, consider that the end of this non-spoiler section. Oh man, we're gonna get the spoilers. Consider this your spoiler warning. We're gonna talk spoilers for Hellblazer: The Fear Machine, all 9 issues of it. If you're not sticking around for spoilers, skip to the end of the episode. You'll find us what we're covering next time. I'm very excited about it. We have another Vertigo book that we have never covered before. It's not part of anything we've covered already. It's a brand new thing for Vertigo.
I have a couple of guesses.
I'm very excited about it. Cannot wait to talk about it next time. I seriously go to the end of the episode, find out what it is, and maybe listen to spoilers. Listen to it all. Listen to Fresh Face Comics. Just keep listening to us. We're great. And also follow us. Our link trees will be in the description below. Follow us wherever you want to follow us. Blue Sky is preferred. I will also have Amazon links to the books we cover today and the books we're covering next time on the podcast. You can buy them on Amazon there, I guess. And is that it? I think that does it.
Yeah, so let's jump into spoilers.
Official spoiler warning. We're going to jump into this with Hellblazer number 14. The Fear Machine Part 1.
Touching the Earth.
Touching the Earth. What a start. So, John is John. Wakes up after what one can only assume is another terrible night.
It's a one night stand.
Mm-hmm.
But then the first twist sort of happens. He goes to buy some cigarettes and some matches, and emblazoned on the front page of the Sun is Face of Evil, Satanist Slayer sought, with just this one picture of John Constantine.
First off, jumping right into Jamie Delano's political allegory, it's very specific that it is the Sun reporting this. I love that. That's a great little touch. And also, this is still actually the result of John's actions, although this is clearly being blown out of proportion. This is directly referring to the massacre in his apartment, all the people that Nergal killed at the end of Volume 2. So like people are blaming John for the murders, and he is now on the run. He skips town. He goes hitchhiking. And John is just, I mean, what Delano always excels at with John as a character is his inner monologue. So we get a lot of that here. John kind of like reflecting on how this all came to pass.
Well, and then the idea that like John is just incredibly now paranoid, like because it's like, well, I could be arrested for murder, and I don't think I have an alibi, basically. And it's the fascinating little idea of John is hitchhiking, there's a murder, and you could think that that very much this entire thing is just a this is going to be sort of our plot. But then Delano decides not to do that, like, at all. Not in like a bad way, but it's the first little twist. And the sort of twist in the twist in the tale of what this is that we're not doing that. We're doing some hitchhiking. We are having an encounter with the police, who
narrowly dodging them, one might say.
Yeah, who are looking for him.
This guy looks like Dr. Evil here.
I hate that you're right.
Yeah, I'm right. But yeah, John escapes the police, goes to clean himself off in a nearby river, clean his clothes, and as John is, naked in the woods, he comes across a how old is this character?
Young.
Do we question this? I mean, Delano isn't implying anything by this, but
weirdly, yeah. Well, here's the thing.
It's very smart the way this is handled. Like, this very could have easily fallen into something somewhat sketchy, but no, this is
okay. So this is like at the oldest, she's a teenager, like maybe 15. She's young. That's if she wasn't young, half of the story would not work the way that it does. And I I think what helps actually is the art. A lot of the art by it's the triple barreled name.
This is who's on this one?
Richard Piers Rayner. Piers Rayner and Mark Buckingham. This is so you see on the cover that suggested for mature readers. But Rayner is intentionally vague with the nudity. Like, yeah. In a book that could have easily gotten away and has gotten away with straight up nudity before.
He's vague about it, and the fact that
he self-censors as well. Like,
the fact that this is a scene where a teenage girl finds John naked in the woods isn't played for anything more than it is, and it's just John just was in a bad place at a bad time.
It is played for the utter awkwardness of.
Yeah, I love the way he draws John's face here. It's just really confused and not knowing what to do. And there's this girl who, first off, comments on his tattoo, which is the first time that I believe John Constantine is aware of the little tree tattoo that Alec Holland gave him while inhabiting his body in Volume 1.
Very probably.
First time it's ever been pointed out to him.
Unless it's pointed out in a Swamp Thing issue that he appears in but if it was, I would expect that to be in other places and not here. But this is Mercury.
Who gives or does John who encounters John here takes him back with her.
I'll write off for a bite to eat, and with her and Marge, who will learn is her mother. Also, she's got mushrooms.
Just shrooms. It's great. John is reasonably alarmed by this. There's something I really love about this interaction, in that like, first you're learning things about like this character in the first like 3 pages of her introduction, that, and like I think John acts as a really great sort of POV character here to for Mercury being our first sort of person we meet in this culture that we're about to be ingrained in for the rest of this story, that John is very much going to become a part of. So it's cool. I like it. John steps in some cow shit, and they get to meet Mercury's mother, who is Marge, and they're living in this van here. Because these are essentially traveling hippies we have here. These are people just sort of living off the land, traveling from place to place. These are nomads essentially. It's just a cool idea for like a cool group of people to shack John up with for this story. I don't know. I really love that. There's something just really endearing about that.
It almost has to be hippies, because if it wasn't hippies, the folk horror aspect wouldn't work nearly as well. Like, a lot of this issue is really important to set up the back half of the story.
Yeah.
And, the whole idea is, let's do free love, let's have this society living off the grid, but very much in a way of capitalism sucks. Like...
what? Capitalism sucks, Jacob? Jacob, if you were to say that, and I'm assuming you are, if you were to say that, that would be implying that comic books, the things that we're reading right now, are political. And I just don't think...
You can't do this bit in a Hellblazer comic.
I just don't think you're right about that, Jacob.
You cannot keep this bit up when we're doing Hellblazer, which is...
Oh my god. Anyway, we meet Marge. There is I would say there's immediately chemistry between John and Marge that I think is Delano is kind of playing off of here.
Marge offers grass or tobacco. Like, it's like, do you want weed or just a cigarette?
Also, small problem with collections of Hellblazer like this. This is the introductory page for Marge here is really confusing. It's a 2-page spread, but just looking at it in the way that it's collected here, if you have the physical book in front of you, you're not really going to know it's a 2-page spread immediately. It's really cleanly cut down the middle, and it's just kind of hard to tell. I just this is the third time I've read this story. I can count. It has confused me, I think, every time.
Well, I don't think it's the only time that this book does this 2-page layout like this, where you have traditional panels in front, like, that take up so much space in front of a 2-page spread.
Yeah.
Which is definitely a great layout choice.
Oh yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's just confusing in collected editions when you're not looking at the full page completely spread out in front of you. We then meet our next our sort of traveling hippie here with Eddie. It's Eddie, right? Yeah, it's Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie.
Eddie is sort of driving this van that Marge and Mercury are in. They take John along with them. And
Marge has also clocked that John is bisexual. Like,
yes.
Like,
love it.
How dare they make John Constantine not entirely heterosexual?
There are a lot of bisexuals in this particular volume too, I would say.
As there should be.
Absolutely. I think every comic book character should just be bisexual.
We get our first glimpse at that, an actual Stonehenge, which is going to come into play much later, as they travel by night, trying to find their way basically to an even bigger encampment of hippies. And there's this whole idea of, it's like, they get hassled by the police in their convoy, but, they keep traveling and living in a convoy. And it's interesting because it would be very easy to be like, oh, look, these hippies are dumb. Especially in the 80s, about over a decade removed from like when hippie culture kind of just died out.
Yeah. But no, I think Delano treats these characters with respect, and like these are just normal people. They this is just the way they live their life. There's this cool little scene early on here where they're like showing John how to like pitch a tent, and like making it like out of just the supplies that are lying around, these like long sticks of wood. John gets like smacked in the face with it. And it is just John growing accustomed to this lifestyle. He makes this tent. He meets up with another guy here named Errol. Errol's one of my favorites. I love him in this group.
Delano does a great job of just introducing these characters and never making you feel overwhelmed, because there's like 4 major players introduced in this issue.
Yeah.
And you get a good sense of who each of them are, that everything seems nice. And how we essentially get quite a bit of peace amongst them. You even get this moment of, at their gathering near the end, they have the copy of The Sun, or potentially not The Sun, potentially a different reporting of John Constantine as the face of evil. And it's very much a, like, he's, it's like he's running from something, but, he might stay. And then we end the issue with our big cliffhanger of John just being rained out at night.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's not a big, like, this is the danger, big, like, cliffhanger ending or anything. No, it's just John coming across some bad luck. And that's the end of the issue. It is simple. All Delano is doing is just setting the stage here for what is going to be this much larger, big horror epic that he's planning here. But it is, I think there's something really to be said for Delano taking his time here and doing some really great world building. As we go into our next issue with Hellblazer number 15. Love this opening here. This is a really fascinating piece where John wakes up and comes across a girl that, like a lot of the rest of the people in this encampment, found out about him being the face of evil, if you will, which is also a Doctor Who story. Oddly enough, he like tries to like calm her down, and she's kind of like freaked out by it, but by who he is. And John decides in this moment, as this sort of rash sort of impulse, to use some magic to hypnotize her and calm her down and make her forget about all this. And you can see John immediately regret this decision. It is just him falling back into these, for lack of a better phrase, dangerous habits that sort of got him to this place in the first place. I really like that. He also just kind of regrets like just messing with her mind in general, and I really love that. Just a great little scene. It's not even like super important to the overall Fear Machine story. I really love that this scene exists.
I mean, it kind of is in terms of setting up what the Fear Machine is going to be doing, because a lot of this is going to eventually go down the route of psychic influences on people's minds, and the problems that can arise from having those influences. We also then have to set up the idea that the camp is currently on a ley line that's running through a stone circle on the hill.
Mm-hmm. Strong psychic energy sort of running through this area that they're walking through.
That Mercury can apparently feel, which is going to be important.
Mercury is psychic herself. And yeah, she is obviously a big part of that. As they're getting back to the camp, they notice that there are these armed guards.
Yeah, they on their way to the camp, they find this Institute for Geotronic, which is a sort of an R&D lab of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And Mercury is just kind of drawn to it because it feels wrong, and that there seems to be fear emanating from just this lab. So, like any kid, she tries to go right in before being stopped by armed security. And the fact that they're going to they notice they're trespassers, but they'll let them go, and they won't call the police because they may as well leave. John pretending to be Mercury's father.
We see a couple other characters here that let them go that are going to be particularly important later. They stay nameless though for now.
One of them is called Davis.
Did they say that? Oh, they do say that. Okay, cool. But yeah, they are let go, and John and Mercury make their way back to the camp. We have a bunch of people hanging around. John comes across the girl that he hypnotized earlier, who does not. Oh, sorry, she does start to. What is it? If I remember correctly, she can remember it.
That John did something to her head, but she can't quite ever say what.
That's right. And so she offers him a drink and as a sort of peace offering, and John goes off to meet with Errol, who, as he is talking to, John begins to trip out because the woman has spiked his drink with some kind of psychedelic, and it really begins to mess with John's head. There's also this important moment as he begins to lose sense of reality, where Errol begins telling John about a woman that he knows named Zed, and that doesn't really clock with John at the moment. But of course, well-versed Hellblazer readers will remember such a name. Jacob, thoughts on seeing the first hint of Zed coming back here?
I didn't immediately catch it on my first read through, honestly.
Oh, really? I guess it has been a while since we read the first two volumes.
Yeah, it's been a while, but then once she actually, because spoilers, she shows up.
Zed comes back.
She comes back. But yeah, I think what's more important is actually the tripping. Like,
oh god, great sequence, really great sequence.
John gets a bad trip that he tries to center himself, but he starts to see things that maybe things are becoming real.
Mm-hmm.
That there is some sort of, and this trip seems to be motivated, oddly enough, by fear. This is where we're really starting to get the idea of fear starting to being sort of this underlying emotion of society, which, let's be honest, is kind of representative of the late 1980s in general. Like,
oh yeah,
after you've been having a lot of economic downturn due to both Reagan and Thatcher. In the UK especially, you have the Falklands War happening.
I mean, hell, I would say this whole story is Delano commenting on, the fear of the people, but also fear mongering in general. It's great. It is the very thing that John feels here. It is this sense of helplessness that I think Delano and Rayner really perfectly capture here, as both in the writing and the art. Just John's inner monologue, the really strange visuals throughout, I think, just really nail this sequence. And it goes on for almost the entire rest of the issue. It's a long one. John eventually coming to much later, after getting this image in his head of a man killing himself by smashing his head into a rock. We don't get this guy's name, do we?
No, we don't. And John then finding the rock and then dismissing the blood as some kind of lichen. And we have the question if this is real, but it turns out John's been followed, but he comes to. He's put, he's put to bed. He and Marge have sex because free love.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
And
Also, John is now growing a full beard at this point.
Yes, he is, which is
full-on bearded John Constantine throughout this. It's a big scruffy beard. He looks less like Sting now. And as the issue ends, our camp is being surrounded by these other armed guards, police, it seems like, and that is the end of the issue. Again, not a huge cliffhanger. Well, yeah, there are police, of course, but like it is more.
This is. I'd argue that this is where the inciting incident happens.
I would say it's more the start. Yeah, the start of the next issue. But
this is we're getting towards. Well, let's be honest.
The end of the issue is more.
With 9 issues, it really divides into a 3-act structure. Like, pretty cleanly of 3 issues to each act of the story, which is kind of interesting that a lot of other comics don't use the 3-act structure and divide their storylines necessarily, but always divisible by 3 in such a way to really hammer home each act. Oftentimes they'll do a 6 and do 3 and 3 instead of 2, 2, and 2.
Anyway, next we go to Hellblazer number 16. Great opening here. Oh my god. Just this fantastic sequence by Richard Piers Rayner. Showing
a man It's great because it's one page of a man we've only seen in like one panel in the last issue, hanging himself from a bridge,
and Mercury waking up on the next page.
It hasn't happened yet.
This is Mercury and her psychic powers seeing the future somehow. Oh god, great sequence. Really great sequence. She wakes up, she's aware of John and her mom's romantic involvement, let's say. And at this moment of calm, when the camp is broken into by these police, people dragged out of their vans, out of their tents here, pulled out, and John is beaten, Mercury is thrown into the ground. It is a brutal sequence here. I think Delana really nails just straight up police brutality here. Really striking sequence, I think.
Incredibly striking. And it's all over in a couple of pages. And you really quickly see Mercury and Marge basically both being kidnapped.
Yeah.
Kidnapped and taken away. And then Mercury reveals, it's been revealing that Mercury knows more than she's been letting on. She's been seeing some of these people, including one of the doctors who comes and injects her with a sedative. All while drugging her own mother to dump her in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And a decent chunk of the rest of this issue is then the rest of the hippies trying to pick up the pieces and figuring out what can we actually do? Where can things go?
Yeah. John eventually wakes up long after the attack and is sort of caught up on what happened. Is told that Mercury and Marge were taken. We had a couple sequences of him talking to the other hippies and sort of trying to figure out what to do with them. John wants to go find out what happened himself. He goes and sees this sort of nearby house that was demolished and
well, it was a house, and it was this is. If the first page is a great example of on-screen horror, this is a great example of off-screen horror, where it's
the aftermath. You're seeing the aftermath of this fear.
Of something.
Yeah, something has happened. We don't know what yet.
We know that that there was a storm in the evening, and somehow it got into the garden of the local vicar and killed him and his wife. And there potentially was someone being chased with a knife, and it's it's trying to pick up the pieces of something, likely something not human, but something our rural English villagers are going to call human and try to rationalize away.
Yeah.
And then we get a sequence of John just in town in the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we really have this whole idea of that fear, that the town is, everything is distant, things are going weird. The desk officer at the police station is very easy to manipulate to find Marge, who's still out of it. John, pretending to be an authority, is going to try to release her and get her out. All while, that turns out that Mercury is gone and has been taken away, and no one seems to know exactly where.
Yeah. But John gets Marge out of there and promises to go find Mercury. He's going to make it his own mission now to go and find her. He goes back and regroups with the other hippies. Get this great sequence of him sort of with him and Eddie and some of the other hippies talking about going to find Mercury, and John then decides to disguise himself, sort of in an interesting way. He gives himself a complete makeover. He cuts his hair, almost this buzz cut, and shaves off his beard. Puts on some sunglasses and a leather jacket. It's very, very not John Constantine. And he assumes that this will help him in going out, getting involved in these people that took Mercury, and going to find her, hopefully.
It's very much the John is taking up the hero's call to action. Mm-hmm. And then we basically see that he's, going to start heading specifically towards London, because that's likely where Mercury was taken. And we see Mercury at this institution.
She wakes up and
sees a man in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And sees a man with a pair of shears cut his neck open, bleed entirely from the sink. And then she's comforted by this doctor who we again saw in the opening, and all she can still see is this man hanging from the bridge and being decapitated.
And she shows him this. And he runs out of the institute because he has now seen how he is going to die. And
we've essentially sealed this man's fate. Yeah. And the rest of the build-up to when the hanging actually happens is...
Oh, God, it's so good. So good. That leads us wonderfully then into Hellblazer number 17.
17. This is Fellow Travelers, which is... So this one is actually drawn by Mike Hoffman. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different style. But it works,
totally works. This issue as a whole is also just kind of a sidestep in the whole story.
Well, it's I can see where you'd think that it's a sidestep.
It does feel a bit separate from some of the other larger things that Delano is dealing with.
Yeah, but I think this is also the first one where we need to make explicit exactly what the fear is doing.
Yeah.
I think it's an integral sidestep to pause, because that first act has just been a lot of creepy buildup. So this one goes out and out horror on a train.
After, of course, an opening sequence of Mercury being looked after by the other doctors here, and doing some sort of experiments on her. We get a sequence then of this machine that these guys have created being activated, and
a psychic who is connected to the machine somehow, being able to sense that John Constantine is on the 1044 from Bristol to Paddington. So there's this, there isn't much more he can do, but we're dealing with some sort of machine to amplify psychic emanations somehow.
Yeah.
And that it's, well, we can see what we can do. We can attempt to delay him.
Yeah. And so we get a sequence of John on this train. He's traveling. We see more of inside the fear machine. I love the design of inside the fear machine. This idea of
it being an ancient stone circle recreated. It's again, it's very Nigel Neal.
It's so cool. It's just especially for because I don't know. You brought up the Mighty Eagle at the start. Like the Mighty Eagle literally is just it's a computer, but I love for a comic especially the visual medium representing the machine as this sort of stranger idea, something that is.
It's not a literal machine. It is a supernatural amplifier, and we are working on that sort of mystical logic.
Yeah,
logic that is very intentional because the rest of the story is going to try to blend that folk horror and science fiction together in such a weird way that, again, you wouldn't expect from John Constantine Hellblazer because we've been dealing with demons up to this point.
Yeah, it's a very different type of horror, I think, to be thrown into this. There are also, I would say for the rest of the Delano run, we're not doing much traditional demon fighting as we did in the first 2 volumes, I'll be interested to talk about that more, in our next volume and a half that we have of the Delano run. In activating this fear machine then, as John is going through the train, I love the visual representation of this sort of green fear monster sort of going through the train.
It's very John Carpenter's The Fog.
Oh yes, I didn't even think of that. Oh, totally.
Again, yes. Well, I mean, it's the terrible thing of a lot of this is owned to the style of Nigel Neal that John Carpenter ran with as a director. Obviously, Delano has. A lot of the British Invasion comic creators owe quite a lot to Nigel Neal and Quatermass. You need to check out the Quatermass serials at some point, Joey.
I should. But isn't also the whole first one lost?
Yeah. Here's the thing: there isn't a whole bunch of continuity, so you can watch of them on their own.
But I just don't think I'll ever be fully satisfied watching not having a proper fully surviving first serial.
See, the way that I did it, I watched the film the film adaptation.
See, again, I'm not sure if I could be satisfied by that. I don't know.
You're missing out on two.
I'm weird. I'm weird. I know. I'm weird.
Oh anyway. Yeah, no. There's a reason I also haven't watched the 2 surviving episodes because I know that I would get way too deep into them and be so annoyed that we don't have the other 4.
Insanity.
Because the first 2 episodes of the first serial do survive.
Yeah.
Though not in the best of copies because they're from the early. It's from 1953, and they hadn't worked out how to record television to film yet, which is a whole thing.
Anywho, but love this sequence that comes afterwards of the fear overtaking all these passengers here. It's just 2-page spread after 2-page spread of this horror as these people on this train attack. Already kill each
tense. Other. The idea is that even when the fear machine isn't in use, they've been doing enough research that it's started to seep outside and just create this discontent.
Mm-hmm. I love the coloring in this sequence. I think the greens used throughout, not just on the borders, but on the people themselves, showing what this all kind of looks like from John's perspective, I think is what's really important here. And it is the strange structure of the panels too. The pages look fantastic. It is a visual feast. I fucking love it. Looks wonderful.
And then it then sort of like you think it's going to get normal when the green dies down, but then it only gets worse as John is trying to basically keep control of his senses, and he finds just carnage. Like the fear has made people start to hurt each other and themselves.
And themselves. It's a smaller panel, but it's on 96 of the collected edition. That middle bottom panel of the kid that shoved his arm down his own throat and the guy that hanged himself right next to him. Ugh. Oh my god.
And then the immediate next one is just help written in blood on a window of a compartment. Like it is dark, and John is the only one who realizes that, oh my god, this train is going to crash, and tries to stop it. Doesn't quite, but he ends up making it out alive from the rubble. And then just the way Delano plays picking up the pieces while men from this institute are watching on and trying to find John, and John realizes it, is fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic sequence, and what we have like one kind of like last scene then,
mainly with this
other psychic,
with this colonel who. It's important to know, we didn't quite establish this, but it's important, and I think it's important overall, that this is someone who fought in the Falklands War.
Mm-hmm.
And now has to reckon with the horror inflicted on these people. And that the machine broke him and then drives him to fulfill what Mercury saw in the mirror. And take a pair of scissors and... I'm just going to read the narration on the last page. He's sobbing again, and Mercury knows what's going to happen. She tries to shut it out, but it happens anyway, just like it always does.
Ugh.
It is incredibly effective, incredibly dark, and it's only going to get darker, especially as things start to move. I should also say, after the slow start, Joey can attest to this, I wasn't intending then to read pretty much the entire volume in one day.
What was the issue that started your entire volume in one day? Was it this one?
No, it was 3. It was, oddly enough, it was 3.
Oh my god. You did all 7. Oh my god. That's insane.
I did 7 in one day.
You are actually insane, my friend.
I don't know what you're talking about. I am a perfect picture of sanity.
Sure you are. Moving on to Hellblazer number 18. Hate Mail and Love Letters. We got a new artist on this that'll take on pretty much the rest of the story then at this point, right?
Well, okay, Mark Buckingham had been inking under Richard Piers Rayner before this.
Yeah.
So
now he's on pencils though.
Pencils.
Yeah, very different style, I think.
Very different style.
One that very much fits the shift in tone in this story, I think.
Oh yeah, because the last issue was that was our one of our big shifts. We have to shift into what Act 2 of this story is going to be, with probably like my favorite death scene in the book. There are a lot of great death scenes in the book. I fucking love this one though. This woman who, I think what I love about it also is its context in the larger issue, because you don't find out who this woman is until later on in the issue, but it is this sequence of her just reflecting on the state of the news.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was there's a lot of horrible news that you can't get away from, and that she's been living in fear of the postman delivering these letters that have basically all been stalking hate mail.
Yeah. And so we get another sequence of a woman killing herself using razor blades from a razor this time. popping some pills, writing a message on the mirror that says, "Goodbye, Jeffrey. I'm sorry. I love you, Jay." It is a lot to take in. As are a lot of scenes in this book are a lot to take in. But God, it's effective. Delano knows. I think what's important about this is Delano knows when to pull back as well. Which is why I think this next sequence is so important. We catch back up with Marge, who is writing a letter to John and asking, if he's found Mercury yet, and just telling him about the life that she has lived.
Yeah, that they have found they have found the pagan nation, which is going to be very important later.
But we find, this story also takes place across a large amount of time, and so there's a lot for Marge to catch him up on. She has lived essentially an entire life without John here, as she has grown more accustomed to this culture. We get a great sequence of her growing acclimatized to it and meeting once again our good friend Zed here, who looks very different since the last time we saw her. Is this finally when it clicked with you?
Yeah, this is when it clicked.
Okay, thank you. Very fun.
I wasn't sure exactly how Zed was going to fit in with the rest of the story, though. I was kind of expecting more background for a later arc, that this might also be seeding later stuff.
Well, as you might also imagine, we're not quite done yet with Zed in the Delano run.
No, we are not.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll definitely be picking up with more after this volume. But more of that at a later date. Yeah, we see again, Errol knew Zed for a time, and it is her involvement with him that gets them into the pagan nation. And after this letter ends, we catch back up with John, who is making some more connections. We begin setting up, as if there weren't enough supporting characters in this story, we begin setting up another a group of characters for John to surround himself with for the back half of the story.
Well, this is interesting. So John is staying basically at a hotel that is largely rented out by gay men to have affairs in, essentially. And it's fascinating and kind of bold of Delano, just like it was in the first two volumes, to create these queer supporting characters. It's run by a gay couple, and they are delightful. They are very happily in a relationship, and despite everything, they largely get to be seen as happy and positive until the end, where everything gets dark because it's Hellblazer. That's what's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's honestly kind of bold of Delano to engage with queer characters.
Just portray them in such a positive light. I mean, it's cool. It's cool. There's a character we're about to be seeing that I think is really great. I think it's an important character to have here. More on him in a little bit, but John then goes and meets with our next big sort of supporting character we're going to have as part of this. This is Talbot, who
Inspector Jeff Talbot,
who John definitely has a history with, and Talbot is also kind of the guy in charge of getting John the reputation as the face of evil. He is the rationale essentially being that the carnage was there in John's apartment and they needed someone to blame it on, essentially, and John is the only survivor, so why not him? John is rightfully pissed that Talbot has kind of ruined his life, and so in a way to make it up to him, Talbot gets involved in John's shenanigans here. He answers John's questions at least, and leads John a little bit further into this investigation.
to find that there's that there's a special patrol group, and that there's this idea of a black squad that is working underneath the police that is likely connected with whoever snatched Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes John home
and finds his wife, Joni, who is indeed the woman from the very beginning of the issue. And now the situation, again, Delano's just really good at this. The situation has become very personal for Talbot, and that is what gets him now directly involved in John's investigation. And
this is all framed through John's letter back to Marge.
Yes.
Before the final leg of the issue is framed with Mercury's own personal diary.
Yes, the experiments that are being done on her at Geotronics here by our doctors. She writes about the people that she has to essentially send nightmares out to she calls them the scaredies. These are people that she's being forced to experiment on, and
that she's being forced into the center of this machine.
Yes. But yeah, she's essentially going into their dreams and finding out what they're afraid of and sending this information back. And
the dream that we see here is a dream of the London Blitz, this twisted version of the London Blitz, very much playing, I think, on fears of the elderly population living in the late 1980s in England. Very much kind of Delano is playing around with the idea that the fear of the past is kind of what's leading to some of the problems in the present. In an interesting way.
What if the Nazis came back?
Or even scarier, what if the Nazis never really went away?
You're funny, Jacob. So yeah. Oh man, what if comics were political? So we go back to John then, as we close out our issue. He goes into one of these rooms in this hotel. We get a striking final page as
mainly he's following someone who's supposed to be having an affair, looks through the keyhole saying like, oh, he must be a doctor, he must be an all-nighter, what's going on? So he then sneaks in, and it turns out, oh no, the man that he was with has been tied up and he's potentially suffocating in the wardrobe.
I need how do we describe? It's a hard page to describe. You can't quite perfectly visually imagine it, but I'll try my best. I guess this man is fully naked. We don't really see anything. Fully naked.
Well, he's in bondage, but
yeah, he's tied up. He's
once again, Delano is playing around with the idea. Like it doesn't feel like it's trying to say that like BDSM is a bad thing.
No,
it is just
but
that
what it is doing. It is showing is. The horror of the moment does not come from the BDSM or the homosexuality here. It comes from the horror of the act of this guy suffocating. That is what is supposed to be striking about the final page. It is not what others at the time might have found unseemly. It is just the horror of the moment of this guy suffocating and dying, and John finding him stuffed in the closet. It's great. It's just I really appreciate that. There's a lot to appreciate here. It's almost like Hellblazer is good, Jacob. You know.
I mean, the only bad Hellblazer I've read is the Horrorist.
Yeah, and that's not even really Hellblazer. That's
that's the Horrorist. It's just
exactly. It's literally a different story, a different series. Anyway, on to Hellblazer number 19. So actually, also. We've gone so far this entire.
We haven't talked about Dave McKean's covers, have we?
Dave McKean, fucking Dave McKean. God, fucking damn it! He's again hot take, good artist.
It's so weird because McKean's such a great artist, yet I think it's fascinating how well he encapsulates the vibe of each issue.
Yeah, without really emulating what is inside the issue. I think
at all, like.
Yeah, it's
McKean likes to be more abstract and almost, for lack of a better term, bleedy with his art. And it doesn't matter if he's doing this, if he's doing the Sandman, if he's doing work for Stephen King of all people. Like,
I like that we had the same thought when we saw this cover. Like, we have not talked about Dave McKean yet. It's a great cover. This is a great cover. It is just this weird, very old looking John Constantine on the cover. Two guys in the bottom corner, both characters from the issue, presumably interpretations of those characters. Just the staircase behind him. It's weird. It looks weird. It's very smoky. I love the style of it. There's just something that really, really works. Oh God, so good. Anyway, into the actual issue. So, picking up where we left off, we have the managers of this motel on the outside.
Hear a scream,
and they go inside to investigate. And we have John. Okay, so this is a fascinating sequence. I really love this. So John is helping this guy who's suffocating, and
it's trying to stop him from suffocating.
Yeah,
but John is also straddling him.
He's in bondage, and John's not in bondage. The other guy's in bondage, and it looks bad. And there is this fascinating sequence where, because the guys don't want to be outed, they kind of have to act homophobic in this scene. At least it's the way I always read it.
It's very much that they're like, we can't have an ambulance come because some of their guests have wives and reputations. It's very much it's Delano commenting on the conservative gay politician, the closeted conservative gay politician. That is very much the implication.
That is who these characters are. Yeah, totally.
That is who these hotels service.
Yeah.
It's quite literally called the Hotel Oscar Wilde. Like,
yes, which is a lovely name for a hotel.
Delano understands the irony he's playing with and is very much enjoying that as an idea.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, we're able to save this guy then. This is, I forgot this guy's name actually.
His name is Simon.
We save Simon. We help him sort of regain himself. He's not doing well. John is sort of here to like help him through this. And I love, again, it's
one of the most explicit John being bisexual sequences, oddly enough. Like, but done all through subtext.
Interesting. I wouldn't read the scene as John being into the guy at all. I don't think that's how.
No, but there's a connection that I think goes deeper than how you would write a straight character.
Oh, totally. I think, well, it is the general acceptance of Simon and this whole hotel of John as a character, while not necessarily being specifically romantically involved with anyone here, or strictly, I guess, sexually involved with anyone here. So it works. I don't know. I love it. It's just a great little sequence.
It also then transitions to Fulton, who has been this. We're recording this kind of late at night, and I'm starting to just.
We're doing fine.
We are doing fine. But to Fulton, who's been the doctor in charge, this is the doctor that we know is going to die by hanging.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we see him, he gets slightly more disheveled and slightly more creepy and more predatory.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's something Delano is going to begin implying here about Dr. Fulton, and
outright does by Mercury saying, "And if you touch my body when I'm gone, I'll let the terror thing out of the trap."
Yeah.
Because Mercury is going on strike.
Yeah. And the idea is, again, this takes place over a long period of time. The idea is that Fulton has done this before. Oh, God. So let's get some trippy visuals, because, my God, I love whenever the effects of the Fear Machine are drawn by any artist. It looks so fucking good. Yeah, we have Mercury visiting more people's dreams, getting more absolutely strange and downright psychotic visuals towards the end of this sequence. I really, really love this one. There's a Anytime I see a sequence like this, I think of there's a Garth Ennis, famous Garth Ennis Hellblazer panel that I can't wait to talk about when we get to it. It just reminds me a lot of that. Some of the visuals there are striking. But yeah, we go inside. We again after the sequence, we have Fulton here the whole time, seemingly popping some kind of pills.
Tranquilizers. We see in an earlier panel that they're tranquilizers.
Yes.
That he is numbing his emotions to the fear.
Mm-hmm.
All while the pagan nation is trying to perform a ritual to bring, led by Zed, to bring Mercury back to them.
Yeah.
Specifically, all the female members of the nation. It's
specifically Zed and Marge, as well as part of this ritual. Free sex all around, and also just a comic in the 1980s, just directly depicting two women having sex. I mean, would there have been anything around at the time doing that at all? Like,
probably stuff in more like literal just porn and probably a lot of just porn for straight men, if I had to guess.
Yeah, true.
Like again, Delano, it doesn't ever feel like Delano is fetishizing the queer characters.
No, not in the slightest.
Or even fetishizing the nudity in general. Like,
yeah, no, because it's like it is. These are like the only thing covering up Zed's straight up nudity here is the paint all over her body and the markings that cover her up. And it's like, no, it's just a fully nude character, and there's nothing explicitly sexual about it, but yet the ritual that they're performing together is sexual in nature, and that is how it is being done.
And it's enough to actually. What's interesting is it's also enough to kind of call out to Mercury. We also get the name Jala Kuntil.
Man, I was looking forward to this. Oh yeah, how about this? Go ahead, try it one more time. I want to hear it again.
Jala Kuntiliokan.
Oh yeah, I believe you. Yeah. Back to John. Hey, how about this, Jacob? Have you
Issue 3 of The Sandman happens during this issue.
There you go.
And we get a cameo of Dream.
First off, yeah, fascinating depiction of Dream here. I think it's interesting. But yeah, it is if you've read The Sandman issue 3, the horrible person behind it aside, this is directly showing where that takes place.
And yeah, we may as well say we do not stand with Neil Gaiman because god, he didn't.
Yeah, we haven't actually mentioned it at all. This Vertigo block is slightly different from our last Vertigo block because we're not covering Sandman stuff because Neil Gaiman's a piece of shit, and it's the whole thing. But I guess technically we are still because we have this here. But also I think it is important that Delano acknowledges this because the ending of Dream a Little Dream of Me, that issue of the Sandman, features a plotline in which Dream promises to take John's nightmares of Newcastle away, and so John has a mode of reflecting on that here, which I think is important to have as well. And it's just a big part of John's character. It's important to have, important to acknowledge that John is starting to heal from that event. From the last.
And in terms of the narrative, John's just gotten the first good night of sleep he's had, like first proper good night of sleep he's had since Newcastle.
Yeah. Oh, good shit. Really good shit.
Which you could argue makes him able now to fight and save Mercury.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but then we get Fulton, who is reflecting on the fact that he's a dead man because the director's going to come back and see Mercury catatonic just as Mercury comes out of it. And Mercury convinces him that he's a nice man, and why doesn't he just take her for a ride in his car? Why don't they go away for a bit?
She kisses him on the cheek even, and there is this fascinating idea of Mercury using her being an object of Fulton's desires to her advantage that I find really interesting. I'm not quite sure exactly what Delano was trying to say about that, but I think that's just an interesting aspect to have here.
I don't think he's trying to say anything. I think he's just trying to do an actual tactic to try to get of Mercury trying to get away from her abuser.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, just interesting stuff. We then go back to John, Simon, and Talbot is kind of our crew right now here. I don't know. I love this group of characters together. They play really well off each other. Actually, it's kind of a classic sort of triumvirate here, isn't it? It's you have John as sort of the leader, you have Talbot as or no, actually no, I guess no, Talbot's sort of the leader. And I would say John is the logical one and Simon is the emotional one.
Maybe.
Huh. That's really cool, actually. But also, this this sort of dynamic here between Talbot and Simon. Between
I think the dynamic that I was getting, or at least a dynamic that I was getting that you would have a point of reference for, is Holmes, Watson, Lestrade.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. I was just referring to this moment coming up here where we have Talbot and Simon, and Talbot being put off by Simon being gay, and as Talbot says, "You a lefty," which I find really funny. But and in the end, like what Talbot then says is, "Do you believe in justice?" And Simon says, "I don't believe it's a natural law like gravity. I think you have to fight for it." To which Talbot says, "Fair enough." And I like that little moment that Delano has them sort of acknowledge their differences and just move on, because there's a common enemy at this time, and these characters are making just a really great team here, actually. As they go down to the subway, and John encounters a strange man in the subway that is kind of yelling at him the whole time, until eventually he yells out the name Hu Jala Kuntelo Leo Khan, whatever the fuck you say it, as he jumps off the subway onto the tracks before a train goes by and kills him. John here has heard the name. He sees this flyer here.
And then there's this paper that was stuffed into John's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
That Tremble, the GOAG, is coming. And Simon recognizes the symbol as the symbol on the ring of the man who strangled him and strung him up.
Yes. And that is where the issue ends, taking us into the last third of our story with Hellblazer number 20. Here we go. With Dr. Fulton getting what he deserves. He's bringing some ice cream over for Mercury, and Mercury is gone and has told the cops about him, and he gets taken in. He gets thrown in jail, and thank fuck. Just a great, satisfying moment. We see him also reflecting on his, I guess, what he thought was a relationship with Mercury.
It's very much that Mercury was trying to put him in this false sense of security so she could run away at the first opportunity.
Yeah.
And then we see our sort of trio going to the Hangman's Noose. Mainly to investigate whatever the hell is growing. It's a fascinating little sequence because we start to put together pieces of dead Russians, people working for the KGB, things about Stonehenge. It's a lot of these disparate threads. Delano has been very careful to set up. Very subtly, that everything comes together. Not everything works. They realize if we find this one ex-KGB member who, immediately thinking he's been found out for something, beams John with a lamp.
As you do. And we then begin to really get into the inner workings then of Geotronics and the larger group within it.
And Webster, who is the director, who we've seen before,
mm-hmm.
has been very much a background player.
Mm-hmm. And we see him interacting with the man that attacked Simon, who calls himself the Hangman here.
This is Webster. The man that attacks Simon is Webster.
Oh, shit, sorry, hang on. Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the other guy here. Who's the other guy here? What's his name? I know they said his name before, and I can't remember what it was. It doesn't important. It's not important. Either way, yeah, you're right. Sorry. Hangman is this is the Hangman, and he is going to work. He's going to hang, as he says.
And the whole idea is that you think, oh, he's going to be the reason Fulton hangs.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way he is, but not entirely, because we then see, as he's stepping out, him turning on the director and almost immediately starting to grab power for himself.
Mm-hmm. This is where I love the shift in the story here for Delano, making it just this weirder, more occultish thing. Like, before, it almost seemed like Delano was trying to describe the fear machine as something still weird and supernatural, but something scientific in a way. And now we're just going into full on like occult supernatural shit, and it is very, very fun. I love this. As we go back to John, Talbot, Simon, and Sergey here, who is a new addition to our team. I forget how. It's been a little bit since I did my reread. How is Sergey associated with these guys?
He's ex KGB. He's ex KGB who was potentially experimented on, who's been experiencing the fear, and that he seems to have uncovered a plot by Masons. All things that have been fairly well set up, just underneath the surface.
Yeah.
Because that's where we're going to. Is we have to infiltrate Masonry. We have to... And it's very much that everyone involved is looking for some sort of actual justice.
Yeah. And God, I love this next page then with it's 171 of the collected edition. Those 3 panels of the city and those clouds sort of billowing in the middle, showing that demon face in the center. Love that. Looks fantastic.
And it's very much moving into this is all dealing with magic.
Yeah.
We find out that the organization is starting then to collect people. Collecting a lot of people that John has met.
Yes.
Including the couple at the Hotel Oscar Wilde.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 other policemen. And there's a point where a lot of the imagery gets framed in webs.
Yes.
Very much to be the whole idea that this is a giant spider web.
Yeah, this has been like connected the entire time. Leading greatly then into this
this idea of literal death squads coming to kidnap people.
Yeah. Imagine that. But no, we have sort of our closing scene for the issue here. This is the end of the issue, right? Taking math. No, it's not. What am I kidding? Who am I kidding? I can't. No, we're a ways off. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway,
it's going to start this snowball.
Yeah.
To the end of the issue of violence and fear.
Yeah, we see Fulton then removed from prison and taken by Webster, the Hangman here, who gives Fulton the rope and has him tie it around and ties it around him and tells him to go, tells him to jump, and then pushes him off instead, killing Fulton in this, obviously in the same way that we've seen him die before in Mercury's visions.
And then we start to see people being taken away.
Mm-hmm.
John being the only one to escape.
Yes.
And knowing where to find the Masons, we have Webster then going to find a child and starting to begin to break loose hell by, with many dark occult rituals, the sacrifice of an innocent.
Yes. There is... Is this the darkest scene in the book? I think this is it. I think this is totally it. We talked about a lot of dark things so far. This is it right here. Delano kills a child. Well, Jamie Delano didn't kill a child. Well, maybe he did. I don't know the guy super well. But he has a character kill a child. And I somehow, the 7 issues into this incredibly dark story, he's still finding new heights to how far he can go.
It's how far he can push things, yeah.
And the issue ends with our
God of all gods starting to raise. Like,
yes. Part of our characters calling out his name is Zed and Marge mid-sex calling out the name. I don't know, so I just find that really funny. Ending the issue, going into our penultimate issue, Hellblazer number 21. My God, I love this opening page. It's so good. It's so fucking good. Mark Buckingham, once again, just crushing the visuals here. Showing our hangman literally holding intestines in his hands. Awful stuff. We see Chaz finally in this story. That's nice.
Is this the first time we've actually seen Chaz as a character?
Seen him physically in Hellblazer? I believe so.
Yeah, because he's been mentioned a bunch.
Well, no. He drove John and Zed in Volume 1, I think.
Oh, right, he did once.
Yeah. Although I think we only saw him from like the we only saw like him driving in the taxi, and like Sweet Trouble was like coming from the taxi. Like I don't think we actually like saw him. Or wait, no. He was in I think the annual, wasn't he? Last time.
He might have been. It's been a while.
It's been a while since I read it. Anyway, this is Fear Machine Part 8. I love, again, the title, God of All Gods, the GOAG, if you will.
Mainly, John is trying to find the Stone Circle to try to end all of this.
Yes.
And is stuck on his own. And we do some flashbacks to see as he tries to work things out and figures out, oh no, this whole conspiracy is being put into action. People are being rounded up.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up finding...
he talks to a guy named Binky,
who I think is heavily implied to be a member of Parliament.
Mm-hmm. He has a Masonic ring, like the symbol we saw on the flyer thing. And all of this leading up to essentially that, you know, it is a corruption that runs so deep into so far into like Parliament itself. It's great,
and the entire British government.
Yeah,
and it ends up being like another Jamie Delano says, "Fuck neoconservatism and fuck libertarianism."
What if the government was bad?
I mean, it's more nuanced than that. It's more of fuck human greed and fuck capitalism.
Yes, of course. I'm fucking with you. But no, we didn't see Mercury now completely free, having shaken off her captors. Is kind of struggling still with the effects of the fear machine on her. Seeing she's at this diner, getting some food, and like seeing the plate of food like turn into like bugs and things around her and snakes.
But then John comes in to have our first real moment of levity of their reunion.
Isn't it
in
nice?
A while.
Yeah, John is reunited with Mercury, and he promises to keep her safe, and we have John still, though he's found Mercury, he still has to he still is too far deep into this to let it go at this point. And so we see our
basically the rest of our supporting cast being locked up. The
yes.
whole idea that this is actually the fear machine itself.
Yeah, they're in a cell, staring at a noose that they all know is going to kill them at some point.
And that there's also heads on spikes surrounded by flames. Very much that someone's coming to kill them one by one.
And I'm going to spoil the rest of the comic right here. We're in spoilers. All these characters die.
Yeah.
Jamie Delano does not give a fuck. And I would like to point out, I do not think, maybe this isn't my place to speak on this. I don't think this is a barrier gaze trope, personally.
I mean, a lot of it is Delano's anger at those who turned a blind eye to corruption.
Mm-hmm. And I would say it is because this is a fate that comes to every character here.
And the fact that, spoilers, we do have queer characters who get a happy ending.
It's true.
Marge gets a happy ending.
Yeah.
So it's clearly not intended to just bury gays for shock value.
Yeah, I think it is merely here to exemplify the brutality of this character that is putting them through this torture.
And the system that they inhabit.
Yeah. Oh God, comics are good, right? So let's as we have our first sort of deck here, John and Mercury have gone back to have gone to our hippies in the pagan nation. Errol and Eddie and Zed and Marge are all there. There is this idea that Zed does not, according to her at least, does not remember John, but John sort of sees the hell, more of the carnage of the fear machine that has put these people through, and we see John sort of going through this again, these weird sort of he goes to the waters around here, and that is there's this
to sort of cleanse himself, to sort of see it all happen, to see this, be forced to watch the ritual slaughter, which is depicted just as traumatic as a ritual slaughter would be.
Yeah.
And really all they can do is wait for this eldritch god to rise, and that's where we end the issue.
Yeah. Oh, God. Final issue of the collection. This is Hellblazer number 22. So let's address the elephant in the room. Zed does in fact remember John Constantine. That is how the issue opens. She confirms that yeah, of course she remembers John. She just, was not ready to face it yet. But more importantly, that their past is not important right now. At least as Zed puts it, there is something far more important happening right now, and that is that they have to work to take on the god of all gods. There's a ritual they are preparing for tonight to defeat it, and John has to be a part of that. But also there's this idea of John having to pay for what he did to Zed, which they sort of acknowledge here. In that, he totally destroyed her life in a way. And so John is sort of paying for that here. John also, I think, importantly, doesn't become, I think, the main character in the end here. He's not the guy to sort of save the day by the end.
No, it's the day is saved by the women, and arguably a mother trying to save her daughter.
Yeah, but then also there's the idea that John doesn't really save the day twofold in that not only is he not literally the one to save the day, but also again, as I said before, like all these people that are captured by the Masons, like they all die. Like he fails all of them. He can't find them. He can't save them. It is just this carnage played alongside this ritual that Zed is preparing. It's brutal, and there's just something to the brutality of it. It doesn't feel like it's going too far, that Delano is still making a point with this, I think. But we have this great scene of preparing the ritual. John has to be a part of it. Let's see. We have the final prisoners being hanged and killed here by Webster. Webster is also, I think, importantly, a dialogueless character for the most part. Like, he doesn't speak at all, and I think he's all the scarier for it.
He's had a couple of lines in previous issues, but even then, he's
but like since he officially like took over and became the Hangman, like I don't think he's spoken at all, has he?
I don't think so.
Terrifying. He's utterly terrifying.
And then the ritual itself happens, and it becomes just incredibly trippy.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially the power of love and sex ends up destroying a god.
Mostly sex. Yeah. It is essentially Marge and Zed fuck so hard they defeat the god of all gods. And God, you gotta love that. Is this Gene Roddenberry's utopian future?
No!
John is left behind. Left kind of to question, like John doesn't quite know everything that's happened. He doesn't
entirely know how the day was saved.
Yeah, and that is the important. Like it is. John doesn't know. He's not meant to know. It is a mystery, not for him to never really find out. He is found eventually in the sea by these sort of fishermen on a boat, and they're reading the newspaper, like civil unrest quelled. Something has changed. People are calmer now, and John is just sort of left, kind of, I would say, wandering in the middle of it all. Still, like John ends the volume, I think, not really having found himself. There's this case of identity that John still feels kind of lost within. And it's something that, like, our next volume and the rest of the Delano run as a whole will sort of delve into as we eventually continue the run.
Well, it's partially interesting because it's not so much like we've started in the same place that we've ended in the same place that we started from for John. John has definitely grown as a character, but he's still moving forward and is still a complete mess.
Yeah. But that was the Fear Machine. That was. Oh man.
It's great.
It's so good.
Maybe a little long, but even then, I still understand why.
Yeah, you understand why it's all there.
It's just a damn shame that this isn't something that people talk about. Like,
when people talk about, you will find that with a lot of Hellblazer stories as we continue to read. Like, it is. There's not much of this not much of Hellblazer as a whole has been adapted into anything, so people don't really talk about it. The most you get is like people talk about like Dangerous Habits and maybe Feast of Friends from the very first two issues.
I was gonna say I know people probably talk about the first, not even the first volume, because that's the first volume, and
it's Feast of Friends because that's because that was adapted directly into the TV show. It's Dangerous Habits because it's just a ridiculously famous storyline, and parts of it were adapted into the Keanu Reeves film. I'd say probably the Newcastle issue is fairly famous, but even then I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it.
I mean, obviously his appearance in Sandman is famous because
Well, yeah, because Sandman is famous, obviously.
Uh,
Um, yeah, but outside of
but
that, yeah. No, also, there's just a lot of Constantine in general that people don't talk about, and they should because he's so good, and I loves him, and he needs to be everywhere.
I also very much like him a lot. I was incredibly excited to come back to this, and it did not disappoint at all.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you are enjoying Hellblazer. Fear Machine, because it is such a, I think, an offbeat story within Hellblazer as a whole. I was not quite sure how you were going to take this one, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you
I mean,
enjoyed
it
it.
also hits a lot of things that I like. I generally like folk horror. I like the works of Nigel Neal. So it's hitting a lot of the same beats that work for me. And again, I was surprised at how tasteful Delano is with a lot of the sexual subjects and the queer themes.
Yeah,
Especially for 1989. It's not
yeah,
perfect by any means, but it's certainly a considerably bold attempt.
yeah.
Uh,
It is. It is when people talk about progress and progressive ideals in general. That is, it is truly an apt name because it is progress. It is continually advancing, and we're always finding ways to be better. So yeah, it is great for what it is at the time, and we can still acknowledge that progress and continue to be better. So yeah,
and as we should be always striving to be better, even when the
absolutely.
world is dark, as it is right now.
Yeah, yeah. We say talking about a very British comic, which I'm sure is also apt in its own way. But yeah. Oh man, imagine if comics were political. All
Oh
right.
yeah,
So, uh,
yeah.
Jacob. Guesses. I need guesses. Next we have a Vertigo
So
episode.
I know it's Vertigo. So I have
Something we have not covered before. I need guesses. I need to know what you think the next episode of Fresh Face Comics is.
I have 3 guesses.
All right.
First one, I'm only guessing it because I actually noticed that it was published under Black Label. Currently, Green Arrow: The Longbow Hunters, potentially.
Fair enough.
Um,
I do. For those that don't know, I do count Black Label within the Vertigo block of episodes. So
my second guess is either starting Preacher by Garth Ennis, because I know you love Ennis,
that is true.
and I know you love Preacher.
That is true.
And the third one is it's because it's a Vertigo run that I'm personally quite interested in it, and the immediate run that came after it, from an author who I've fallen in love with over the course of this podcast, Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol.
Ah, interesting. I will say you are absolutely correct about one of those. If you were to lock in a guess, what do you think it is?
I think I'm going to lock in Doom Patrol.
Lock in Doom Patrol. All right. I'm sorry to disappoint. It is not Doom Patrol. I think next time, Jacob, we're going to step a little bit outside of the DC universe and talk about...
We're doing Preacher.
We're doing Preacher! Jacob!
Jesus Christ. Okay. Oh, that's going to be...
We're doing Preacher. This is so weird for me. This is outside of the usual DC Marvel stuff we cover. It is DC still. It is Vertigo. It was published under DC Vertigo. It still is published under DC Vertigo. It's going to be Preacher. We're going to do this in the sort of 6-volume paperback collections, the ones that you find most commonly, I think, these days. So we'll do Preacher Book 1 next time. It's the first 12 issues of Preacher. Oh God, I cannot wait to see what you have to say about this book. It is such an important piece of comic book publishing for what it was at the time, and I think your take on it will be fascinating. So we'll see as we finish out our Vertigo block next time with Preacher Book 1. It's also your first Garth Ennis, and it is, I think, the most Garth Ennis to ever Garth Ennis. So,
we're gonna need some content warnings, aren't we?
So many content warnings. There's okay. I was gonna wait to share this story with you till next time, but there's. I'll say, I'll give you the broad strokes of it, and I'll go more into it next time. There is a scene in the book that we're covering next time, Preacher Book 1, that caused a DC editor at the time to toss his book up at the ceiling and cause a dent in his ceiling, because he was so outraged by it.
Okay.
I cannot wait. I am halfway through my reread right now. I am ecstatic.
I have a feeling we're going to need something lighter after this, though.
I guess depending on what you consider lighter, it might be the following episode, but we'll see. We'll find out. Be sure to join us next time when we talk about those things. But in the meantime, Jacob, what do you have going on?
I have mainly my
That
blog.
was forceful. Oh my god.
I don't know what that was. I have mainly a blog where I have been. I'm hoping to get back into more book reviews soon, but I've been reviewing Star Trek: The Next Generation. I will have just done an episode called Data Lore.
Yes, Data Lore. Data Lore. The first, probably, probably like the first well-liked episode of season 1.
Yeah, of TNG. That's what I've got going on. Sorry, it's getting late, and I can feel my faculties breaking down.
That's entirely reasonable. I also do the Star Treks. I also talk about those with my brother. We do video reviews on the channel. We also just put out our video on Data Lore. And if you join our Patreon, you can see our video on Angel 1 week in advance and see Shortlist Riker in all his glory. All that said, also on the channel, we do Fresh Face One Shots. It's a spin-off of this show where we cover current comics that are coming out. We cover Superman by Joshua Williamson, Wonder Woman by Tom King, Batman: The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, The End of the Long Halloween Saga. We cover The Uncanny X-Men by who's this Joey Morgan fan, Gail Simone. We cover that. I personally cover X-Men by Jen McKay, which is having another fucking crossover with Uncanny in March, and I'm losing my god.
I mean, it's pretty much, it's most of the X books are crossing over in March, so that's gonna be
absolutely insane. Also on the channel, we do R2BD, our Star Wars show. We changed the format of that recently. We're covering individual Star Wars things rather than larger Star Wars episodes. We recently put a video on Skeleton Crew. We have a video on The Last Command coming up soon. I'm very excited about all that, so be on the lookout for all that when it comes out. Also check out our link trees. Our link trees are in the description below. Follow us wherever you want to follow us. Blue Sky is greatly appreciated. It's where we do our Q&As. It's where we do all kinds of promotions for things that we do and just kind of talk in general. Also the channel, Blood Donut Studios. Subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. Any all support means the world to us. The channel is growing, and it's great to see that growth continue. There's also, there's one more thing I wanted to say. The show you're listening to right now, wherever you're listening to us, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever. Leave us a rating. Comment if you're on Spotify. Comment, and I realize I should be doing this as a good podcaster. If you comment on Spotify, I will read out your comments on the show. I should have been doing that all along. But
yes, we should maybe collect them for the top of the next episode.
Yeah, because we do get them occasionally. So be on the lookout for that. Do that, and I will read them out. But I think that's it. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, this has been Joey Morgan
and Jacob Licklider.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.